Well, I'm glad you're here. We're kicking off a brand new series today leading up to and into Easter, which is 4 Sundays from now, which is kind of crazy to think that we are already into Easter season. But we're going to call this series Chasing Peace. And I could have called it Chasing the Presence or Chasing the Savior, because Jesus is peace. And so that's what we're going to go after these next 4 weeks. But how I want to kind of kick off the series is I want to ask you a question. And this is kind of an all skate. If you've been around a while, I call it an all skate, which means everybody can participate in this question. I want to ask you what you wanted to be. If you can go back in your mind when you were a little kid, what did you want to be growing up? Anybody want to be a firefighter or a police officer or a paramedic? Anybody that you're like, that's what I wanted to be? Yeah, there was a couple of us. How about this? I wanted to be a famous athlete. Anybody dreaming of being an athlete? What about a rock star, a musician? Anybody want to be like, I'm going to play in an 80s hair band for the rest of my life? Well, minus the hair. We're going to play in that. I don't mean this to be sexist, okay? The reason I say this is because I've never heard a guy say, I just dreamt of my wedding. Never heard a guy, but I have heard ladies, and again, I'm not trying to be sexist. I've heard ladies say, I just wanted to grow up and marry Mr. Right and have a beautiful wedding. There are people that when we grew up, we wanted to be something. Now, full confession. Many of you, if you've been around a while, you know that I wanted to be a police officer. That was my high school desire. But before that, as a little kid, kind of late elementary, even probably into middle school, that's what I wanted to be. And you can thank my mom. I was begging for a Spider-Man tattoo on my shoulder. I wanted this, and Kim was like, I wouldn't have married you if you would have had. And when I say this, I'm not talking about like Tom Holland and Andrew Garfield or Tobey Maguire. I'm talking about this guy. Like, I wanted to be the cartoon Spider-Man slinging my webs. In fact, my brother and I were 2 years apart. My mom was a piano teacher. She taught from 8 in the morning until about 8 at night, Monday through Thursday, had about 80 students. So we weren't allowed in the house, because she taught out of the house. We weren't allowed in the house a lot if we were going to make noise. When we were boys, we were going to make noise. And so we had to play outside a lot. And one year, my brother and I created, not a tree fort, a tree house in this huge oak tree in our backyard, and we had a table and chairs in there, and we had this big tree house. And I climbed out onto the limb one year, probably 5th or 6th grade, and I tied a rope around the limb, and then if you did this, you tied a loop on the bottom, and you would stick your foot in it, and I would swing from the tree house, slinging my web. My mom came out one time, and she's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm Spider-Man. She's like, you're not Spider-Man, and you will never be Spider-Man. Thanks, buzzkill. Right? Like, that's, as a kid, that's how I felt. But here's the truth. I had a dream of being something. I'm not going to be that. And many of us, there's a difference between what we thought life would be and what life actually is. I thought my marriage would be, and it actually is. I thought parenting would be, and it actually is. I thought my career would be something by now, and here's where I'm landing. I thought my health. How about this one? I thought retirement would be. I remember I was talking with a lady in the lobby before church, and we were talking, one of her family members has cancer. And I remember my dad retiring, getting sick, and dying within a year and a half. And he thought his retirement would be a certain way, and it wasn't. See, here's the truth for every single one of us. We thought life would be what life actually is. And in the middle part here, in the middle area, is where we chase peace. It's this space or this gap between what we thought life would be and what life is. And we chase financial peace. We chase money and anxiety and depression, peace of and peace from those things. We chase peace in our marriage and peace in our parenting. We chase peace of mind. And some of us aren't chasing peace. Some of us are trying to chase perfection. And you'll never find it. There's no perfect husband. There's no perfect wife. There's no perfect marriage. There's no perfect family. There's no perfect job. There's no perfect coworker. There's no perfect boss, not even me. There's not even a perfect church. You know why our church isn't perfect? Because we're here. And I don't mean just me and Kim. I mean us, you. We're imperfect. There is no perfect, and some of us are chasing perfect, and we should be chasing peace. And I want to ask you a question. Years ago, I was on staff at a church, and my mentor, Kevin Myers, asked us this question in an all staff. There's about 150 staff members there sitting in listening to Kevin teach. And he asked us this question, and it has stuck with me for 10 years. He asked the staff at this church, he said, how would your life actually look? What would your outlook on life actually be like? How would it change if you really believed and actually believed that in every situation God was with you? That question has stuck with me for 10 plus years. How would your outlook change if you really believed that in every situation, the divorce you're going through or have gone through, He is with you? The struggle with anxiety and depression that you're going through, He is actually in it with you. How would your situation or your outlook on life change? This question has rattled me for 10 plus years because we have, again, if you've been around a while, you know I kind of make fun of bumper sticker theology or coffee cup theology. You know, well, God said it, I believe it, that settles it. That's terrible theology. You got to wrestle things down. No God, no peace. No God, no peace. God's my co-pilot. That one's stupid. Fear God, go to hell. Like this, they're not wrong, but it's not the right approach. In every situation that you're going through, how would your life and your outlook on life change? How about this? At work, you got passed over for the promotion that you probably deserved. You earned it and they took it. How would your outlook on life change if you actually believed that God was really with you in every prejudice that you've experienced in your life? With the disability that you've lived with? How would your outlook on life change? How about this? In the town you're living in, when it's the town you're living where you wish you weren't. Here's why I say that. We've started our Upward Sports, and I was talking with a young family, probably in their late 20s, early 30s. Their kids were practicing, and I was talking with the husband and wife. I said, where do you guys live? And they said, we live in the borough of Mount Pleasant, and we hate it. They don't hate Mount Pleasant. They want property. They want acres. They want land. And they're stuck in a postage-sized lawn with a smaller house. They said, we hate it, but we can't get out of it. Listen, they're not knocking Mount Pleasant, but they don't want to be there. And I wonder, how would their outlook on life change if they actually believed in that place they didn't even want to be, they believed God was with them? How would your outlook change? If you have your Bibles, I encourage you to flip open to the book of Genesis. The book of Genesis is the first book of the Bible. If you just crack open a Bible or open up your Bible app, I want to work through the life and the story of a guy named Joseph. In fact, if you read the book of Genesis, I want you to hear this. In the book of Genesis, at the very beginning, you've got chapter 1 and 2, which is dedicated to God creating the heavens and the earth. He gets 2 chapters. Joseph and his life get 14. The sun, the moon, the stars, all hung in place. The land, the water, the creatures, all put in place. 2 chapters. Joseph, one guy, 14 chapters. Maybe it's because at the very beginning, God is telling us, I want you to live a specific way. I only needed 6 days. But I need you to live a certain way, and it takes about 30 years in the life of Joseph. And I want you to follow this design. What would happen if our outlook on life and we actually believed that God was with us? See, there's a way that we thought life would go, jumping from tree houses and slinging my web. to how life actually is. And it's in the middle where God shows up. It's in the middle of what you thought and where you're at that God shows up. So, Joseph and his story. We're going to unpack this the next 4 weeks leading up to and into Easter. And we're going to talk about this question. We're going to kind of look at this question for the next 4 weeks. How would your outlook on life change if you actually believe that God's with you in every situation? Joseph, we're going to pick him up at the very end of Genesis, and in the following weeks we'll kind of lead up to it. But Joseph is the youngest brother. There's 12 of them. And he's a dreamer. He's a big visionary guy, even as a kid. In fact, in Genesis chapter 37, it says this. One night, Joseph, the youngest son, had a dream, and when he told his brothers about it, they hated him more than ever, which means they've hated him a lot already. Okay? Now, I want to just pause here and acknowledge, if you don't know much about Joseph, he comes from a very dysfunctional family. Without making eye contact with the person beside you or near you, maybe you can resonate a little bit. You might come from a dysfunctional family. Hopefully it's not near this. We're going to unpack that in a second. Joseph wakes up, says to his brothers, listen, I had a dream. We were out in the field, guys. We were tying up bundles of grain, and suddenly my bundle stood up, and your bundles gathered around me, and they bowed down before me. How awesome is that dream? And the brothers are like, we hate you. You think you're going to be king? You think you're going to rule over us and reign over us? And they hate him all the more because of his dreams and the way he rubbed it in. Joseph is a snotty little brat. Joseph, if you don't know much about him, has a sweet coat that his dad made him because he's the favorite. We'll unpack that one next week. Soon, Joseph had another dream. He told his brothers about it. Guys, I had another dream. The sun, the moon, and the 11 stars, my 11 brothers, you all bowed low before me. So Joseph has these big dreams, these big visions, and his brothers hate him for it. And then it says this. Joseph's brothers saw him coming. They recognized him because of the coat of many colors, because of the stuff that his dad had given him. And as he approached, they made plans to kill him. Okay. Like I said, I hope that you're not living in a dysfunctional family like this one. I hope yours isn't in comparison to this one. Here comes the dreamer. Let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns, which is a well. And then we're going to lie about it, and we'll tell our dad that a wild animal has eaten him. Then we'll see what becomes of his dreams. That's awful. My brother and I fought. I don't think he ever made plans to kill me and throw me, I hope not, and throw me into a well with. When Reuben heard of the scheme, he came to Joseph's rescue. Let's not kill him. Why should we shed blood? Let's just throw him into this empty well, the cistern in the wilderness. Then he'll die without our laying our hands on him. Now, Reuben was secretly planning to rescue Joseph, return him to his father. He's a good big brother. Joseph arrived. His brothers ripped off the robe and threw him into the cistern. Now, this next sentence makes me laugh. Cistern's empty, no water in it. Then they sat down and had a picnic. Can we just talk about that for a second? They are psychos. Hey, let's kill him. No, let's not kill him. Let's just throw him in there so he can die a slow, painful death. Did you bring the subs? You got the chips? Sweet, you got the drinks? Let's have a... This is how my mind works. That's awful. I bet there's like no remorse. They didn't feel guilty. They're eating. So they're having their snack pack. They're eating their lunch. And they looked up and they saw a caravan of camels in the distance coming. It was a group of Ishmaelite traders. They were taking some gum, balm, and aromatic resin from Gilead down to Egypt. They were traders, nomads. Judah then speaks up and says, wait. What will we gain by killing our brother? We're going to have to cover up the crime. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of energy. Why don't we, he says, instead of hurting him, let's sell him. I mean, after all, he's our brother. That is terrible, by the way. Making himself feel better. He's our own flesh and blood. Brothers agreed, so they pulled him out of the well. And the Midianite traders that were coming by, they sold him for 20 pieces of silver. And the traders then took him on to Egypt. Now, we're going to stop here for a second. If you've ever wondered if you've read the book of Exodus or you've read or seen movies on the Exodus with Moses and Pharaoh and the Exodus from Egypt, you're like, well, how did they get there? This is how they got there. This begins the setup where God puts his people in a place of leadership and authority. This is the beginning stages. How would your outlook on life change if you actually believe that God was with you in every situation? We're going to unpack this story just for a second today, because this one is powerful and it sets the stage for the next 3 weeks. The brothers hate the youngest. He has a big dream and a big vision that came from God. God put those dreams and those visions in him, and he is rewarded not with rewards. He's rewarded with consequences. He's rewarded with prison. He's rewarded with betrayal. Joseph is bought by a traveling group of gypsies. They take him to the house of Potiphar, who's in charge of the palace, and Potiphar puts him to work. He continually does the right thing and reaps no rewards. And maybe some of you are like, I get that. I am doing the right thing. And there's how I thought my life was supposed to go. Follow God, honor God, serve God, obey God, love God, da-da-da-da. But here's how it is. And there's this gap. And I'm in this middle, and it just doesn't feel good. And you're not reaping what you thought you should. Can I just tell you, Joseph gets it. And for years and years and years, he sludges it out in the pits of the prison and gets consequences for doing the right thing. And those visions and those dreams and those aspirations and those goals were put there by God. God-sized visions and God-sized dreams, and he is facing consequences. Maybe God's put something in your heart. You're like, this is not where I'm supposed to be. Hold on. What if, and how would, your outlook on life change if you really believe that right where you're at right now, God is with you? There is 5 specific times in the story of Joseph, in the 14 chapters in the life of Joseph, where the phrase, the Lord was with Joseph, comes up. And these 5 specific times that this phrase comes up was when Joseph was not living how he thought he would be living. 5 times the Lord was with Joseph, and those specific 5 times was not how life was supposed to go for Joseph. And in Genesis chapter 50, if you have your Bibles and you're there, we're going to unpack just a couple verses in this, and then again, we'll work our way up to it these next couple weeks. But I want to start at the end. Because Joseph didn't rise to the second in command overnight. In Genesis 50, there's Pharaoh and then there's Joseph in charge of the land of Egypt. But it was disappointment. It was heartache. It was letdowns. It was wrongful accusations and unjustified convictions. Years of discouragement and defeat. At one point in the life of Joseph, his boss Potiphar, Potiphar's wife, makes a sexual advancement at Joseph as a young adult, tries to get with him. Joseph refuses. He says, I won't do that to my boss, and I won't do that to my God. And he flees, and then she accuses him that he was the one making the advancements, and they throw him into prison. And the Lord was with him. Now, in Genesis 50, here's what it says. This is at the very end of Joseph's, or of the brothers' lives of the book of Genesis. It says this. Joseph's brothers, picking up in verse 15, saw that their father was dead. They realized, wait a minute, what if our brother holds a grudge against us now? So they sent word to Joseph saying, this is the brothers saying this to their brother, the youngest brother Joseph, who they've sold, betrayed, and bailed on. Your father left us these instructions before you died. Before he died. This is what you're to say to your brother. I asked you to forgive your brothers for selling you out. Can I just stop for a second? Joseph has no reason to believe the brothers right now. There is zero reason for Joseph to say, well, okay, I'll take your word for it. Because the brothers have hurt him and betrayed him. But I'm asking you that the father is saying, as he's writing his last commands, Jacob, his father, Forgive your brothers for the sins they committed against you, the wrong they did to you. Please forgive the sins of the servants of your God, your father. The dad realizes that he's failed his son. And when the message came to Joseph, it says Joseph wept. Now, here's what it also says. Joseph replies to the brothers who bring him the message, don't be afraid of me. Am I a God that I can punish you? You intended to harm me, but God. God intended it for all good. He brought me to this position so I could save the lives of many people. Now, real quick, what that means is that there was a famine in the land, and Joseph had the wherewithal to prep and prepare and stockpile grains and food for the 7 years of famine. The brothers know that Egypt has prosperity, has some reserves, and so they go and asking for food. It says, don't be afraid of me. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good. And he's brought me to this position so I can save the lives of many people. And I want you to hear this. If you hear nothing else, please hear this. God does not orchestrate pain in your life to prove a point. But God will use the pain in your life as a platform for his good and his glory. God doesn't orchestrate the pain that you're going through just to prove a point to you. But the pain you're going through, he will use it as a platform for his good and his glory. The brothers come face to face with Joseph. Joseph is face to face with his brothers. These are the brothers that threw him into a well, then fished him out and sold him. We don't talk about this, but I was reading this week going, could you imagine the fear in Joseph? Could you imagine the hurt, the betrayal? They kick him into an empty well and they walk away. He thinks they're never coming back. Then they fish him out and he probably has this glimpse of hope. Wait a minute. They might actually be rescuing me. Oh no, they're selling me. And he's handcuffed and shipped off to a foreign land. Could you just for a second picture the built up animosity that Joseph should have had? Put myself in the place of Joseph. And he says, you intended to harm me, but God. And I want you to think about it. They might have betrayed you, but God can use it for his good and his glory. They might have wronged you. They might have hurt you. They might have bailed on you. They might have stolen from you and lied about you and made accusations against you. But God can use it for his good and his glory. How would your outlook on life change if you really believed that in every situation God was with you? See, this isn't just an Old Testament reading. This is a New Testament reality too. Paul wrote in Romans, all things, in everything you're going through, God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. That means this, your giftedness and your weaknesses, he works it together for good, for his glory and his purposes. That means your strengths and your shortcomings. That means the picture you thought your life would be and where your life actually is. God will use that gap for his good and his glory for those of us who love him and have been called according to his purposes. That simply means those of us that had said yes to follow Jesus. See, God doesn't orchestrate pain to prove a point. He'll use it as a platform. And how would your life change? How would your outlook on life change? So maybe we could say it this way. The detour you're on isn't a dead end. God is with you. The detour you're on, how you thought life would be, how life is actually going, that detour, that gap is not a dead end. You might be divorced and you're thinking, this is not how I thought it would go. It's a detour, not a dead end. You might be depressed. It's a detour, it's not a dead end. You might be discouraged and defeated. You might be on the brink of financial ruin and you're thinking, this is not how I thought life would go. Detour, not a dead end. How would your outlook on life change if you really believed, as sure as you're sucking air right now, that God is with you? And here's the deal. Here's the truth. Here's the reality. Only you can prevent forest fires, right? Only you can wrestle this down. Will you allow your circumstances to define God? Or will you allow God to define your circumstances? Listen, I have lived in this one in seasons of my life where I've allowed my circumstances to determine who God is. It's not a good place to be, but I've been there. Probably been there more recently than I wish to admit. But I can't wrestle this down for you. The church collectively can't wrestle this down for you. Preaching, teaching, Bible studies, no one can wrestle this down. You have to wrestle down. Will I allow what I'm going through to define who God is? Or will I allow who God is to define what I'm going through? How would your outlook on life really change? Your circumstances might not. You might be in the prison. You might be in the dungeon. You might be betrayed. You might be sold out. You might be falsely accused. But how would that change if you actually believe that God was with you in every situation? See, I think the older we get, we realize I don't want to chase purpose. I don't want to chase careers. I don't want to chase titles. I want to chase peace. I think the truth is that we already have peace. The Prince of Peace, right? Jesus came and brought peace on earth, which means we don't necessarily have to chase after it. It's already here. For fun this week, and you can totally do this. You can fact check me. I got on the Googles, and I typed in the search bar literally this sentence: how much time does the average adult spend thinking about the future? Go ahead, you can search that later. Type that in your search bar. How much time does the average adult spend thinking about and looking about to the future? And what the first populated hit was this, of the millions of hits, was this study done by Harvard, and they're the smart ones, right? The Harvard people are smart. Dan's not. Steve Bratt, the Harvard University staff writer, said this. People, and he interviewed 250,000 people, people spend 46.9% of their waking hours thinking about something other than what they're doing. And it leads to unhappiness. 50% of the waking hours that you and I are awake, we will spend thinking about the future or the past. And when we think about the future, we're thinking about fear and anxiety, things that haven't happened yet. And when we think about the past, we think about the things that have happened that we wish hadn't happened, the shoulda, woulda, couldas, and now we're depressed. So we live in fear and anxiety and depression 50% of our waking hours, and it leaves us unhappy, which goes back to the question, how would your outlook on life actually change? If we would stop looking to the future and stop looking to the past and live in the present and realize that we don't even have to chase it, it's with us. The presence and the peace of God. Which then goes back to how I opened up the teaching in Genesis. God only gets 2 chapters. Joseph gets 14 because he's got the whole world in his hands. He's got you and me, brothers, sisters, in his hands. He's got everybody and everything in his hands. And what he's saying is, I'll take care of it. You just need to trust me, Dan. He's got the whole world. And we spend half of our waking hours thinking about what's going to go wrong or what did. How many of you have ever experienced the spinning wheel of death? And when you're on your phone and you hit the spinning wheel of death, you got to press the power button, the volume button, and your belly button all at the same time, and it's got to reset, right? If you're buffering something on like Netflix or YouTube and it gives you the spinning wheel of death, you got to go to your router and unplug and count backwards to 30 from 100 while holding your breath in your belly button. But it's something that happens when we do a hard reset. Most often, it course corrects. If you do a hard reset on your phone, you do a hard reset on your modem, you do a hard reset on a computer, most of the time it does a magical thing. It fixes the problem. There's something magical that happens when we do a hard reset. I want to give us a hard reset this morning. Are you ready for the hard reset? Here is your takeaway. Where your feet are planted, your God is present. This is not a Dan quote. I've heard this for years. You've probably heard it too. This is the hard reset, that no matter where I'm at, no matter where my feet are planted, that means God right here in this moment is present. That I don't have to chase him. He is here. There's a big word called omniscient, omnipresent. God knows all and is everywhere. God is omnipresent. The other one is omnipotent. He's all-powerful. So he knows everything. He's powerful over everything. Only needed 2 chapters in the book of Genesis. And he is right here with us. Where my feet are planted, my God is present. That is our hard reset. The story of Joseph to me is awesome, but Joseph's not the hero, God is. The story of Joseph is powerful, but Joseph's not powerful, God is. That right where you're at, the career you're in, the school you're in, the marriage you're in, the reality you find yourself in, where your feet are planted, that means that as sure as you're sucking oxygen and sucking air, God is right here with me. That's a hard reset. Stop chasing power, position, and even purpose, and chase peace. So that's week 1. Week 1, chasing peace. And how I want to end is I want to pause and acknowledge that right now in our room, right now where if you're watching online later, that God is with you. Brett, God is with you. Megan, God is with you. Charlie, right here, right now, God is with you. Chrissy, God is with you. Butchko, in this moment, he's in your marriage and your family. Scott, with you. Don't get offended if I didn't call your name. I can't go through 170 people, and I don't know everybody's names. The reality is, hey, Lord, he's with you right now. And when you go to work tomorrow, guess what? He's with you. Where your feet are planted, the presence of God is with you. The power of God is with you. The purpose of God, the person of God is with you. That's a hard reset for all of us. Alan and Linda, what you're going through right now, I don't know what it is, but God is with you. Right here, right now. That's the best news you're going to hear today.